Okay, welcome back to part 2 of our Revell 62 Impala S video build. Picking up where we left off last time, we're starting today with some decaling. So OCD me is measuring the back to make sure we've got the Chevy logos in exactly the right position. The amount of times I've done this by eye and thought, yeah, that looks absolutely spot on, to then look back later and think, yep, that's nowhere near right. So measuring, a bit over the top, but I like to make sure it's perfect. And we're near enough spot on. It just needs a little bit of movement. So we'll move it around. Once we're happy, we've got it in position. We get a cotton bud, get all the moisture out from behind it to get it starting to set in place. And then we'll hit it with some ultimate decal solution to set it in. Same on the front bonnet as well. Now, there are different options in the kit. I think there's some chrome trim, but I didn't like the look of the chrome trim. I prefer the look of the decal. So we've gone with this option. It adds a little bit of colour as well. There's also some nice side badges, which a lot of people showed interest online, asking how I did it, and it's just simply a silver decal. As simple as that. One each side. There's also an emblem at the back as well with it. And yeah, just some careful application. Make sure we got it all nice and straight. And then we got the logo on the front as well. So again, make sure these are all nice and straight. And also be careful using any sharp tweezers like I got there as well. It's very easy to mark the paintwork, so just be confident in what you're doing and nice and gentle. So yeah, we get these set in place with the ultimate decal solutions and a little bit of heat, and they can sit and dry before we go to clear coat. So these little heat guns off Amazon, absolutely brilliant. And there we go, decaled up, very simple, but just adds a little bit of colour to the bodywork. I am absolutely in love with this green colour. It is by far one of my favourite colours I've ever done. That with the chrome silver trim, I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Now we're going to put a Tamiya black panel line wash over the entire car. Basically, my theory is if we can hold a wash, give it a wash. The only areas I avoid is around the windows. I think it can look a little bit OTT on the windows. So literally any panel lines, just touch the enamel panel line wash to it, and it should capillary action carry it round. Now it's up to you what colour you do. On darker colours I tend to use black. On lighter colours I tend to mix a bit of black and grey to get a nice dark grey colour. So we're going straight black on this. It's an enamel based wash over lacquer paint, so it doesn't harm it. Once it's dried, which takes 20 to 30 minutes depending on the heat in your room. My model room's usually around 20, 23, 24 degrees. Centigrade, so it's pretty warm in here, and it dries in about half an hour. We can get a cotton bud with some odorless mineral spirits. I use Santador from Winsor & Newton. We can wipe off any excess, leaving behind nicely trimmed panel lines in the background. Okay, sadly I lost the footage of me removing the wash, but you've seen me do that 100 times by now, so it's fairly simple to do. Just wipe over some odorless mineral spirits until it's gone. Now we're in our spray booth. We've got fresh kitchen paper down, which we've wet with some water. That way if any dust lands, we can get hopefully it shouldn't get airborne again. We've got our Pro Scale Paints 2K, which is our 3-stage system, and we're going to 2K the body. So always an exciting stage, and I always anticipate doing this one like, oh, I hope everything goes all right. But with our 2K system, it's very simple and very reliable. So we start off with our clear coat and an activator. It's a 2-to-1 mix of clear coat to activator. So in that medicine cup, I've measured out originally about 10 millilitres of the clear coat. And then because it's a 2-to-1 mix of clear to activator, we're now putting in 5 millilitres of the activator. So 2.5 milliliter pipettes. So every time you use a pipette, once you've used it, we're going to use this pipette again to stir the mixture and get the catalyst activated and going. We're then going to throw the pipette away and never ever use it again. We don't want to contaminate any of the bottles. We then get our thinner, and we're going to add 5% of that mix of activator and clear in thinner. So if you've got, say, 15 millilitres of activator and clear, 10% of that would be 1.5, and 5% would be 0.7. So I've just put in there 0.7 millilitres of thinner. Mix it all up again and throw the pipette away, never to use it again. Then we're going to get another medicine cup and one of our 190 micron strainers, which again we still over on Pro Scale, and we're going to strain the 2K. Now, I always do 2K because of the activator. It can get a bit crusty on its rim, so I always do it as a matter of course. The decals have been drying for 24 hours. Never 2K or clear coat over freshly applied decals. You'll get issues with the moisture underneath. Anti-static brush over the top, and we're going to apply a nice semi-wet coat on our first coat. Now, this is my 0.5 iWater Revolution CR, so the same as the 0.3, but a larger needle nozzle. And I use a larger needle nozzle because I think it's beneficial in having a slightly wider pattern for the 2K. We're at about 22 psi, and like I say, for this first coat, we're going to apply a nice semi-wet coat evenly all over the body. Now, we're not trying to get it glossed. That is not the idea of it. It's probably going to be our third or fourth coat that we get our full gloss coat on. We're just trying to get down a nice even coat. What this will do is this will flash off. It will get super tacky. It's also known as a tack coat. And that way, when we come back with our subsequent wetter layers, it will reduce the risk of runs significantly. And like I say, our 2K is very forgiving to use. One of the easiest ones I've used out of the many I have tried over the years. And yeah, it gives absolutely fantastic results. Now, like I say, we've got a fresh filter in the booth, fresh paper on the base. I've got my plastic box to the left to put the 2K body in to reduce the risk of dust landing on it. I've got my full face respirator. It's a 6500 3M full face respirator with the harsh protection filters I can get. And double gloved on that left hand for two reasons. Number one, to stop anything getting through the nitrile glove. And number two, when I clean the airbrush, I can whip off the glove that's covered in 2K, and I've got a nice clean glove to clean the airbrush with. I'm in the room on my own. The window's open a crack, just allow a bit of through flow, and my bench vent A300S booth is on, which is a very, very efficient spray booth. So for all these safety precautions, keep your skin covered. You can see my left arm, I've got a bit of cling film around it. Yes, I know it's a bit, what's the word, rustic, but it works and it does the job. And once I'm done spraying the 2K for the day, I will leave the room while off gases. So we put our first coat down just then. We'll let that flash off for 5 minutes. We come back with the same mixture of paint. As you see, we've gone a little bit slower this time, and we're putting down again another wet coat. So this is a full wet coat now. So we're trying to get as good a finish as we can in one coat. We're not going to go over it again. And as you can see, we're popping everything back in the box to begin with. You can see the beautiful green has darkened quite a bit. As you can see, slowing the pattern down, bring the airbrush a little bit further away. We are doing overlapping coats of the 2K, probably 40-50% overlapping. That way we keep a wet edge, and we're just paying attention to all the angles and getting a nice even coat. Now, this is the thinned mixture we did at the very beginning, which is only thinned 5%. After we've done this coat, we're going to pop it back in the booth for about 90 seconds, and while it's in there, the 2K will self-level out, and we're going to thin the mixture another 10%. So we're letting it rest for that 90 seconds. The 2K self-levels just that little bit more, and you'll see when you come back that it might not even need any more 2K. With applying a thinner coat of 2K over the top, that will self-level faster, and I think that is the best way of applying our 2K. I tried many different ways over several models, and this is by far the most efficient way of using our 2K, and it gives the best results. The finish out the airbrush is absolutely phenomenal. It just looks absolutely great. So these are the two this is the groundwork we're doing now. These are the two wet coats going down. And as you can see, we've already got a great 2K finish there, but what we want is a totally flawless 2K finish. This should look like glass when it's done. So we'll put our mixture into a fresh medicine cup so we can see exactly how much we have. We've emptied the colour cup of the airbrush in there as well and emptied the airbrush out. So if you've got, say, 10 millilitres of clear coat mix left, we can add another 10% of thinner to that, so that'll be another 1 millilitres of thinner. And now that small amount of thinner will thin this drastically. Again, using a fresh pipette, we pop it in, put the lid back on everything, get everything out of the way, give it a good thorough mix up, and that will go back into the airbrush. And make sure you pull through the paint through the airbrush, because you will still hold residual 2K from the first two coats. In the meantime, that body's been sat, the 2K is built self-level as it does over time. We're going to take it out and have a good look at it. And as you can see, we've got a great clear coat already, but this will make it even better. So we're going to go around now and apply a full wet coat of paint everywhere it needs again. And it does need it everywhere. I've not quite got rid of the orange peel. And what you want to see is a completely smooth glass-like finish. How this looks when you're done spraying is how it's going to dry. So if you can see orange peel now, it's going to dry with orange peel. And the idea of using 2K is to get the best finish possible at the airbrush. So you want it to be as super smooth as possible. So don't be afraid of putting more down. I see a lot of people saying, oh, I didn't want to put any more down, I didn't want to push it. You can push this a lot further than you think you can. So if you watch that roof there where I sprayed it, it sprays down, it looks a bit orange peely. Within seconds, it will self-level out and become super smooth. And you can put a couple of layers over the top of this until you're happy. There's quite a long working time of R2K. And as you can see, almost perfect on the roof. So again, I'll just let it sit for a minute, or well, another 90 seconds or so. Just have a look at the bonnet, thinking, does it need a little bit more? And I can see just a little bit on there that it might need. So we just let it self-level, and it will sit and just level itself out. And use the light to your advantage, angle it. And as you see, if you can see anywhere that isn't quite smooth, put a little bit more clear coat down, and it should self-level out. The better the job you do now, the less work you've got later when you're sanding and polishing, because you've already put the groundwork down of a fantastic 2K clear coat. So it's looking absolutely beautiful. You see that roof's looking really good. The boot lid's looking good. The sides are looking good. And thankfully, I got very little dirt in this, very little dust. So it was a really nice 2K job to start with. So don't be afraid of putting more down. You'll be surprised how far you can push this 2K. It's unbelievably forgiving, especially for a beginner. It is very forgiving. And if you follow those safety precautions, you'll be just fine. I've been using this stuff for years. The respirator, especially the full space respirator, is important. Keep your eyes covered. Keep it off your skin. Good extractor. No family or pets in the room with you. You'll be just fine. Absolutely fine. So there we go. Just again, having a look around. Any imperfections? Does it need a little bit more? And if it does, I'll just put a little bit over that area. And if it doesn't, leave it be. And we can put that to one side to dry. Now this will be fully cured in about 7 days, but it'll be touch dry in about 3 to 4 hours, depending on the temperature of the room. And I know people who will polish it and sand it after 4 or 5 days. I think leaving it for 7 is beneficial. I think it sands and polishes better, but you can literally handle this within 3 to 4 hours. It is hard enough to handle. I just think it stays a little bit soft for a bit longer for polishing, and it can leave scratch marks in the finish if you sand it too quick. So back into the booth. It sat there for another few minutes where I've just emptied the airbrush out. And before I commit to throwing away the 2K mix and completely putting everything away, taking it out, giving it an angle round at the room and seeing if it's happy, put it back in the box and leave it be. So while that's dry, I'm going to leave that for 7 days. We're going to work on everything else. I'm just chatting away to somebody here. But you see all the parts on the bench we're now going to cut off and clean up. So we've got lots of chrome pieces. We need to pick all the parts we need because we've got multiple components that we're not going to need. So it's going through systematically through the instructions, figuring out what engine parts we need, what interior parts, what chrome parts we need, and then putting the rest as spares. There's the body. I think I'm showing a few of the lads in the hangout. Look at that colour. It looks absolutely phenomenal, and it looks so nice clear coated. This is probably about 4 hours after I sprayed it, and it's dry. I can handle this, no problem at all. It dries super fast. One important note about 2K, it does need to be above 15 degrees centigrade, which is what, about 60 Fahrenheit for the catalyst to work properly. So it needs to be in a warm room. The warmer the room, the quicker it will dry as well. And I know a few people that bake their kind of plastic bodies in dehydrators. I like to let it dry naturally in my cave. Like I say, my cave sits around 24 psi, 24 centigrade, and it dries within 4 hours. It is handleable. So, like I mentioned earlier, what I'm going to do is, don't normally do this, is I'm going to assemble all the chassis. Now, there's a few parts I probably would like to have painted separately and done them in different colours, but I'll be completely honest, for me, it was more important to get the ride height correct. So I opted to build all the chassis up. So I've chucked all the drivetrain in, all suspension components, just clean them all up, glued them in place, and that way I can get my ride height perfect. And like I say, this was only 2K this morning. I've already got tape all over it. This is how confident I am in my product. So yeah, the standard mounting points on the car, they're a little bit high, and it's a little bit wide for these wheels. So a little bit of trimmage there. I did try sanding it to begin with, but it wasn't quite enough. So I opted to razor saw off the very end, nice and gently, with the old JLC razor saw. It's a very fine tooth razor saw. There we go. Once that's off, we can give it a little bit of a sand. It still leaves the hole for the mounting. It just takes off a little bit of the width, and the wheel fitted in absolutely perfect then. So the rear ride height was pretty much spot on. I'm just trying the discs as well. These are all going to need modifying to fit. I'm just trying to get the ride height correct to begin with. So the hole in the back was perfect. The ride height was great. The front was a little bit high. So what I did was I glued it all together and just drilled a little bit higher into the plastic, and that worked. So again, a bit rustic. We're using cocktail sticks as axles because somehow the metal axles in my kit were missing. I don't know if they were there to begin with. I am not sure. Because I want to test fit all this and get it all sorted now rather than faffing around later when everything's painted. So we need to drill the holes a little bit bigger to get the cocktail sticks to fit through. So some gentle drilling. We got all these in place. Like I say, it wasn't too big a drama to lower this car. The back ride height was perfect for the wheels. It was just the front. And like I say, where the mounting point is that I'm drilling now, I literally just drilled a touch higher on the body. And I'm doing it right now. There we go. So you can see the original mounting point there at the bottom. I just drilled a little bit higher and used that as a mounting point instead. So we'll just pop this in, have a little look. I think this is the original ride height. And yeah, just not quite low enough. So a little bit of a modification later on. We'll get it all to fit in place. Like I say, the back end fit in perfect. I think the ride height was pretty good on the back end, but the front was just riding a touch high. So a little bit of modification, and we get it all to sit in perfectly. Now, the brake discs themselves were a little bit too wide. Obviously, we've altered the dimensions on the kit, and I had to alter the width of the wheels as well, because again, they're a little bit wide. These are kind of generic wheels. So a little bit of modification here. This is the old Mr. Hobby razor saw, very expensive razor saw. These are like £40. I got sent mine for a review years ago. As you can see, I've cut the back of the wheel flush with the disc and cut the back off the disc. I'm just going to trim the back of the wheel a little bit more. Can't quite get in straight, so just cutting at an angle with the snips keeps it flush with the disc and does a perfect job of cutting it nice and flush. Like so. There we go. And then in our modified mounting point, I think this is our modified one, we can get it to sit in. So it did take a bit of work, but it wasn't too tricky to do. I've done a lot worse in the past trying to get the ride height done. But like I say, I wanted to get it done now. So it was done now before everything was painted and there wasn't a lot of faffing around. So just testing it all, having a look. So it's a lot of on and off, back and forth. Like I say, the rear ride height absolutely spot on. The front just a tad too high. But there we go. We're taking it off and I'm drilling the upper part of that front suspension now. So I've literally gone to the next piece up in line with the original hole and just drilling a point through the plastic nice and carefully. There we go. And then offer our wheel in place like so. Just needs a little bit more drilling. There we go. So the cocktail stick axles, they work really well, to be fair. And now let's see how we look now on the altered ride height. It should look a lot better. There we go. I've actually got a picture. I'll pop it in so you can see it because I did take a picture at the time. Now the engine, like I say, I was sent an Iceman collection, a couple of engines actually, which I was going to use on this, but the gearbox transmission was like short molded, short cast, so it didn't quite fit. And sadly, they very kindly sent me out new ones, which was very good of them, and the intake stacks for the carburetors as well. But they just didn't get here in time. I'd already finished the kit by the time they arrived, so they'll live again to appear in another car at a later date. But to be honest, the kit engine on this, actually a really nice kit engine. And what I did was I opted to spray the valve covers and the air cleaner in the body colour, just to add a bit of a different look to it. So it makes it less boring. And we've got one of our beautiful Pro Scale distributors as well, which we've just started stocking over on the website. So yeah, hopefully that had a bit of detail to it. So lots of parts to go in place. So start off with the engine halves and transmission halves. Then we get the cylinder heads in. A little bit of Tamiya extra thin just to get it all glued in place. Making sure we get everything orientated the correct way. Same with the sump as well. Now for me, these engines are totally alien to me. We don't get these in the UK. We didn't really get these cars in the UK, so I have to refer to instructions and online images. So if I get things wrong, I apologise, but I do try my best. But it's literally like me saying to you, if you live in the States, the double overhead cam YB block at the Escort Cosworth, what colour should it be for the year? You probably wouldn't know. Whereas in the UK, a lot of people who like fast forwards will probably know that. A lot of cleanup on the exhaust and what have you. I tend to hate cleaning these parts up. They take forever. And I opted to open up the ends as well because for some reason, a lot of the American car kits have closed exhaust ends, which I never understand. So drilling it with a smaller drill bit to get it centered and then widen it up with a wider one just makes it look a bit less boring. I also noticed a lot of the exhausts are very restrictive on the American cars, which is, I think, believed down to your emission laws. You must have got a lot more power putting a bigger bore exhaust on them. So yeah, they always look a little bit puny to me, but either way, opening the end up makes it look a bit more realistic. Now we're in the booth. We've got some Mr. Servicer 1500 Black, which I have thinned and decanted into one of our spare Pro Scale bottles. The perks of owning the company. To be fair, you can actually buy these empty bottles on our website. We have the 30, 60, and 100ml on the side for sale. So if you want some storage bottles, you can buy them on our website. We're going to give everything a coat of primer. So we've got all the chassis to prime up. Obviously, we pre-built most of this, which I wouldn't normally do, but I did it for ease. Now, like I say, there were a couple of parts where I'd like to have painted a different colour, but for me on this build, it was more important to get that ride height correct. So sometimes you got to take a compromise, and yeah, that is it, unfortunately. I'll be honest though, the amount of times I pick a car up and look underneath, not very often at all. I tend to show it you guys in the video and then probably never ever again in the whole time I own that model. So not the end of the world. Like I say, the ride height is more important for me. So sometimes you just got to make compromises. But the Mr. Servicer 1500 primer, laying down. I'm actually using the Harder Steenbeck Evolution, the new one, the 2024 one here. I think we used it in part 1 for a little bit. Verdict was I didn't like it. I preferred my Iwata's, but I gave it a fair crack. It did spray a lot nicer than the old ones. But for me, I'm an Iwata fanboy through and through. So stick with what you know. And yeah, just drop it on the floor, freshly primed, just drop it. Luckily, it's all alright. So a couple of coats of Mr. Servicer on the chassis, gets us nicely primed. So like I said, I did give the Harder Steenbeck a fair crack. It just wasn't for me. I think if you're going from the older model Harder Steenbeck to this, you'll notice a big difference because it is a much nicer airbrush to use. But for me, it's just a compromise over my Iwatas. The Iwatas just do things better for me. It's a personal choice, as is many things in life. PC and Mac, Sony or a PlayStation or Xbox, loads of different things. And it just becomes a personal preference. So priming everything that needs priming in black, and then we've got some Tamiya grey surface primer, which has been decanted and thinned a touch with Tamiya lacquer thinner retard, about 10%. We're going to prime our engine grey. So a couple of light coats of this, building up. Now, The Tamiya primer is complete opposite to ours. It likes to go on wet. It self-levels, and you'll find if you don't put it on wet, it can end up a little bit bobbly. So if you're getting a rough finish off your Tamiya primer, you're more than likely not putting it on wet enough. So bear that in mind. Like I say, not a bad engine on this car at all. Actually, really, really good. So, yeah. Although the Iceman collection engine would have been great to use, it's not the end of the world using this at all. While we're there, we're going to prime, we'll do little bits and bobs. Quite a lot to prime on this. And as I've been doing for the past probably year now, I've been batch priming everything. So literally clean everything up in one go, the whole kit, prime everything in one go, paint everything in one go, job done. We've got General Motors engine orange here again, which we do stock a few of the engine colours over on ProScale for the US cars. So head on over there and have a look. There's a separate section on the home page of the website for it if you do the drop down banner. I'm just going to put a couple of coats of this down, build up nice and slow to get that iconic engine colour on the engine. Now you could prime in white as well if you wanted. I've sprayed this over grey before, so I knew the colours show through just fine. So again, personal preference sometimes with primer. I'm doing the transmission as well. This will be painted silver later on, but I like to do the whole thing just as a matter of course. So like I say, just a couple of light coats, build it up nice and slow. Getting all those nooks and crannies and everywhere. So we've got a lot of parts to paint up. We've got a lot of parts to re-chrome as well, which we'll get to in a little bit. But after a couple of coats of the GM engine orange, we've got a nice orange engine, which looks really good in my opinion. Just getting all the nooks and crannies, make sure you get everywhere covered. There we go. And then on the chassis, we've got some Tamiya LP5 semi-gloss black. And we're just going to semi-gloss black the whole thing. Now, I get criticised a few times on YouTube about people on the chassis saying, oh, it should be such and such colour with the body overspray. It more than likely should. It should. It's the same with the engines. They should be in firing order. Maybe so, maybe so. But I'll tell you something. There's no fuel in it. It's not going to start. So does it really matter if the firing order is not correct? No. Does it really matter if there's no overspray underneath the car? No. This is my vision of this kit, and my kit doesn't have overspray on the chassis, and it doesn't start. So it doesn't make any difference. If you guys out there want to do things like that, fair play to you. Knock yourselves out. Just understand that everybody thinks like that, and yeah, it's just each for their own. Again, ProScale Metallics, absolutely beautiful. I think this will be steel I'm using on the exhaust, and you can just see the coverage is absolutely phenomenal. It covers with ease. I really do love our metallic colours, and it's a big growing range now. I must have about 15 colours in that range in total. And yeah, absolutely beautifully finely pigmented. Coverage is fantastic and so vibrant. It looks absolutely beautiful. And same on some of the engine parts as well. I think this is going to be bright aluminium now because it looks a bit of a brighter colour. And that's it. We're going to leave that there today. So that's all the engine painted up. We'll be back for part 3 very soon. We've got some blue on our oil filter as well. And I will catch you all next time. Don't forget, there is a Patreon as well. You can get up to 3 months early access on these videos by becoming a patron. Pick the applicable tier. You also get 10% off ProScale paints, again, with the applicable tier. You get a weekly bench update every Saturday. I do a bench update for patrons, and there's an exclusive Facebook Messenger chat group and supporter Facebook group over on Facebook, ironically. So you can join that by clicking the link in the description down below. Catch you next time, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.